So our next guest is Aaron Schaeffer, better known as Armed Atlas. Well, maybe not better known, depends on how you met him first, I guess. But Aaron has been having a lot of great liberty conversations around the Second Amendment, but also around other difficult topics because, you know, when you talk about liberty, one issue tends to lead into the other because I've always said there is no First Amendment without the Second. And I think about the Fourth Amendment. And, you know, the Fourth Amendment is something that actually protects the Second, the idea that you can't be searched. All these things tie together. And a guy who's really good at having those conversations is Aaron Schaeffer. Aaron, welcome to our broadcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I appreciate everyone for the opportunity to talk.
Well, so tell us a little bit about yourself, a little background. Where are you physically located?
Yeah, actually, I'm located in the South. I'm located in East Texas. It's hot right now. It's 98 degrees today, and
I don't know how I didn't know that before. I grew up in Galveston.
Oh yeah.
So I am familiar with that heat and some fierce humidity.
Oh yeah, it's been rough. I don't know how we're surviving. The horses are probably dying right now, but I'm super excited to be here, and I'm super excited to talk to the People for Liberty and just kind of talk about what we've been discussing in the program that I've been running called Costly Conversations, which has revolved around Second Amendment conversations, specifically directed towards the Black community and their involvement in the Second Amendment world. Just getting into firearms, responsible firearms ownership, and things like that. Of course, you know, Costly Conversations, as the name suggests, covers a variety of things. Like we're not scared to tackle topics just because it might get you some looks. That said, honestly, at the core of it is the idea that men and women of this country and of the world should be and are free to make their own decisions, to choose how they will defend themselves, that maybe we don't need to rely on the police to show up at our beckoning call. As soon as something bad happens, we can defend ourselves via common sense, via situational awareness. And if, God forbid, you you can defend yourself with a firearm as protected under the Second Amendment.
You know, one of the quotes that stuck with me early on in my life, growing up in Galveston, was we had a police officer who came into my elementary school, and this is how times have changed, talking a little bit about firearm safety. And their goal was, what they were doing was teaching kids what to do if you do accidentally find a gun in your house, which I actually think is a critical lesson.
Absolutely.
Children should be taught that, and pretending that it's never going to happen doesn't help anybody. But one of the things he said when one of the kids asked, he said, you know, why do we need a gun in our house at all if they're police officers? And he said, well, sometimes the police are only minutes away. But what if you only have seconds?
Right.
You know, so your parents made a decision to have a gun in the house and to be safe with it, and they're trusting you as a kid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to tell you everything that they said, but it was an amazing lesson. But now, right, you can't even talk about guns in schools.
No,
right?
they'll consider you crazy. They'll put you on a list. I remember I actually, just kind of thinking about it, I was interested in firearms back when I was in high school, and my teacher was so concerned about me. I guess she thought I was crazy or strange, and that's just the kind of society we live in. I mean, I went to high school years ago, but
not
imagine
as long
how
as me, my friend.
No, I get it.
Not as long as me. I am class of '85, and I'm old enough that my dad had riflery as a class in his high school.
Wow.
So,
I would have loved to have that class. But quick shout out to a friend of my show. He goes by the EDC guy on YouTube and Instagram. Him and somebody he's working with have actually created a children's book designed to help children understand just the lesson that you talked about with the local sheriff who came to the school, what to do when you find a firearm in the home. So they've worked on this book. It's actually released, and I'm gonna actually have him on the show in the fall. So if folks want to look out for that, I'm excited to have him on the show. Of course, look him up, the EDC guy. That book is, I think, vital to children's education. Someone once said we should teach in school finance and firearms. Well, there we go for one of them. firearms is essential. They're
Yep.
part of our society. They're not going away as much as people might like to think they are. They're not
Well,
going away.
and in fact, it's just the opposite. By not teaching it, we increase the danger of having it
Mhm.
around. I mean, the same people who are saying, absolutely, we have to be teaching kids about sex so that they're prepared because, let's face it, if you're a teenager,
Yeah.
sex is going to find you.
Yeah,
The
it's
same,
there.
exactly. It's the same thing about teaching safety when we talk about firearms. So let's talk a little bit about the community that you're working with, the African American community, and how there are sometimes different issues than the
Mhm.
white population has in terms of dealing with firearms.
Yeah. The first issue that I generally run into when having a conversation with people from my community, the Black community, is the way they think, kind of what's in between their ears. When you get a firearm, you want to work on a few things, but the first thing you have to address is what's between your ears,
Right.
and really, it's not any of the things that you would typically think of, except for they generally, this is generality, believe like, oh, why should I get a gun? Guns are for white folks. That's an old white man's thing. And that
Right.
is not the case, especially considering last year the demographic shifted tremendously. There was a huge influx of 5 million new firearms owners, and 40 to 60% of them were from the African American population.
Wow.
So it's a huge number of folks. So really, if we're talking about people that we need to reach out to, people who have shifted their mindset, we're talking 40-year-old folks. I talked to a guy late last year in the winter. He turned 50 not that long ago, and he bought his first firearm because of some of the events that unfolded last year. He felt maybe now is the time. He waited 50 years to buy his first firearm.
Sure.
Him and his wife. Now, I don't have any problem with him choosing to do that. That's a great thing. I encourage it. But what took you so long? That's my question. What are the mindsets that have been baked into the community that have, I suppose, kind of put a lot of folks into the mindset like, let me leave white folks this to the white folks. Let me leave this alone. This isn't for us. This isn't for me. This is dangerous. This will get me killed. If I have this and the police show up, I'm gonna be in more danger. Things that are not true. That's
Yeah.
a lie. And
Right.
really,
But
it's fear that has been.
It's also true that in states where we don't have constitutional carry, where you have to do some registration in
Right.
order to potentially do something, that if you are legitimately fearful of the police, you could be worried about telling them you've got a gun. I
Yeah.
had this tragedy. I used to own guns, but then I lost them all in this terrible boating accident. So the
Yeah.
police don't have to worry about me anymore.
Wow, that's terrible.
But that's true in a community where you have a legitimate fear of being monitored unjustly,
Yeah.
then you might have a second thought about that. Now, I want to quickly, I took the liberty of making a smaller URL for you. So tinyurl.com/costly conversations now goes to your YouTube channel. So everybody, I recommend going there, watching the videos, tinyurl.com/costly conversations, and then bookmark the page and subscribe when you get there so that you get notified when new videos come out. Tell me a little bit about some of the videos that you've put up there. What are some of the ones that people have been excited about?
You know what? I would say the most exciting conversation that I had was with a young lady. She goes by Rhonda Mary, and she's a contrarian. Like if the government says jump, she's like, why? And I'm here for it. I'm here
Yeah,
for
sure.
it. And you know what? Honestly, she brought up a lot of very valid points. She talked about her own situation and why she got into firearms. She's a 2A advocate and a social political commentator on YouTube and Instagram. And she brought up a lot of good points regarding why she got into 2A specifically. Because of a road rage incident, and a police officer who looked just like her, a Black woman, said, "Hey, where's your firearm? Why didn't you have one?" And when the police are asking you, "Why aren't you armed?" and the police officer looks like you, that does something for you. That encourages you. It says like, "Hey, why am I not armed? why haven't I had these conversations with people from my community, other friends, and other family members to jump into it? So
Right.
yeah, Rhonda Mary, she's up on the screen. She definitely, that was one of my more exciting conversations. Of course, they're all great. I love each one of them. Just getting to know these different individuals from the firearms community and just knowing their stories, figuring out what makes them tick.
So, one of the interesting things, this is our Juneteenth broadcast, and the name Juneteenth comes from the fact that a lot of people didn't know that slavery was over because of
Right.
unreliable communication or unreliable communicators who might have kept that information themselves.
Hmm.
Uh, and bearing that in mind, what's something that most people don't know, or that they should know about their right to bear arms that people don't know?
You know what? That's a great question. Well, a lot of people, first of all, aren't aware of their state and local laws, and I would highly recommend, just to make sure that you're not going to run into any issues. Should you
Yeah.
choose to purchase a firearm, it's not as difficult as you think it is, but you should definitely go ahead and look up your state and local laws before you decide to purchase a firearm. I would also encourage everyone out there to actually go look for a Juneteenth celebration, for National Range Day, rather. A friend of mine, Marshall Davis from My Sister's Keeper, former veteran and affiliate of USCCA, which is a concealed carry organization. She set up a National Range Day where anybody, not just Black folks, anyone can go to the range, wear black, and just a celebration for National Range Day. We're going to the range, we're learning how to shoot. And of course, there's going to be different events and different people celebrating and different individuals and trainers who are there ready to offer their services and of course just help you out. There's going to be different groups. It's
So
going to be great.
you really hit up something. I had no idea National Range Day was the same day as Juneteenth. I'm
Yeah,
really going to start plugging that because that's awesome. It's a great
absolutely.
event. I'll tell you one of the things that I was surprised to learn, and you can tell me about this, is that if you want to buy a shotgun, that's actually pretty easy to do.
Oh, so easy.
Right. And so
Yeah.
people who think, oh, I can't go out and get a gun because I'm really worried about it, chances are pretty good you could go out and buy a shotgun and bring it home that day.
Yeah, likely same day. And if you're at all concerned about government regulations and all the different things that come with it and the changes to the law and who's the president and who's making noise, shotguns are generally exempt. Shotguns and hunting type weapons, and
Right.
that's actually something me and Rhonda talk about. Is it's interesting how the AR-15 is on the chopping block and different pistols are on the chopping block, but yet the hunting type weapons like shotguns and hunting bolt action rifles have generally never been in the conversation, even in the strictest gun states like California. I'd highly recommend, at least if you're going to start, go ahead and get a shotgun. You don't have to get anything crazy expensive, and the ammunition at this point in time is dirt cheap and readily available.
Certainly compared to everything else, it's pretty cheap right
I
now.
mean, yeah, compared.
What so let's do a little bit of gun safety too while we're here. Uh, I'll go through some of the things that I learned in my class. One of the most important things that people don't know is that when you're shooting, you should always be aware of what is behind the target that you're shooting at. Do you want
Yeah,
to talk about that a little bit?
yeah, definitely. And when I think about that, I think specifically or especially in regards to a hunting, knowing your target and what's beyond it, but also just in a self-defense situation, you need to know about that. And even when you're just at the shooting range, because God forbid you get ready to start, practicing or training, and there's somebody who is going up to the targets to just pick one out or put one up. You need to know your surroundings. You need to know what's in front of you. You need to know your target and what's behind the target, or you could have a very unfortunate situation. That is one of the fundamental rules of firearm safety. And there's three more, including keeping your finger off the trigger. I believe that
Yep.
rule alone will save you from a world of heartache and grief and pain. But also, I would say the most important rule, just it
Yeah.
is what it
Please.
is to keep the firearm pointed in a safe direction at all times. I've seen a firearm go off because somebody, got a little careless, something got jammed, somebody was cleaning, and the firearm went off, but it went off because their finger was on the trigger. But thank God it was pointed in the right direction, because if it was not, you could have a serious situation.
Right. I one of my one of my earliest instructors said, there's a whole bunch of different safeties involved, but the most important safety is the one between your ears.
Yeah.
And
Right here.
yep, that's it. Well, Aaron, I really appreciate you coming on. Like we said, Armed Atlas Costly Conversations. You can find that at tinyurl.com/costly conversations. Anything else you'd like to mention? We learned that Juneteenth is also National Range Day. And so rangers are all over the place. I just did a quick search for it on Google, and you'll find a bunch of places that you can go and fire right now. And it's not just for African Americans. Anybody who wants to show up to National Range Day will be welcome. And, that's a great community to be in. The idea that, we form all these different communities. I can tell you that I have communities of friends who like firearms that are as tight as any other community that I've ever been in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm excited to see all the new and sprouting communities that have decided that they want to be involved in firearms, including Black communities that say like, hey, we want to get armed, we want to get trained, because training is the biggest thing. If you're going to buy a firearm,
hallelujah,
go get you some training. Like, yep. It's not that expensive, and even if it is, it's worth it. Your safety, your well-being, and understanding how to use it effectively, it could save your life. God forbid, but it could save your life. That said, I've been seeing quite a few members of the LGBT community deciding to take up their rights and to participate in the Second Amendment, which is huge. I think statistically that community is half as likely to be involved. So I think that's huge.
There's a great liberty story, a famous libertarian named Tom Palmer, who, was out and gay pretty early on. And his mother, who, really loved him because she was his son, bought him a 38 and said, listen, where you are, the lifestyle that you're living right now, and this is, in the early 80s. She's like, I just want you to be safe. He's like, Mom, I'm not a gun guy. She's like, I want you to go get trained and learn how to use this and just carry it with you. And then one day, sure enough, he was chased to the end of an alley by a group of 4 guys who intended to do him harm. Yeah. And he had a 38 and they left. Yeah. And it's one of those things that absolutely you're right. Communities at risk. And nowadays, I think most people can point to themselves and say, in one way or another, I'm doing something that's at risk, but traditionally at risk communities, African Americans, Hispanics, LGBT, everybody should get the education. You know what? Even if you don't want to buy a firearm, you can still get the education without it. And so that you'll know.
Yeah. And there's wonderful national firearms directories. At the end of in the links for each one of my videos, I have a link to firearms directories where you can find instructors, and you can also find specifically Black instructors if that's something you want to patronize, if that's something you want to experience. I think that's awesome to support just a great community of instructors who are passionate, who really want to put out awesome products for the people. And I'm just excited to be part of this. I'm excited to be talking to you, Dan, and I'm excited that we can have these crazy conversations that people don't want to have. But at the end of the day, it's going to point us towards freedom, whether that be with the Libertarian Party or something else that they choose. It's just pointing them towards liberty, and I'm excited about that.
I appreciate it. I thank you for everything you do. My guest here is Aaron Schaeffer, sometimes known as Armed Atlas, tinyurl.com/costly conversations. Aaron, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Dan.
So, one of the classic things, I meant to go to me full screen. One of the important things that we talk about is to ensure the blessings of liberty, right? That mighty phrase from the Constitution. Okay. The Constitution is enacted to ensure the blessings of liberty. And one of those amendments is the Second Amendment that says, shall not infringe. Pretty clear thing. It's an important thing for us to be talking about on Juneteenth, that those rights aren't given to us by Congress. Congress is told not to interfere with our natural rights. And the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is one of those natural rights.